So remember when Ghostbusters or Answer the Call, I think it's called now, 2016, came out, and they were telling everybody that they're review bombing it because it was because people were putting in stuff ahead of time. Even though there is also review glow ups too, where there are people and you'll see it where not Rotten Tomatoes, but like some sites you'll see a critic crap on a movie, kind of, or the thing doesn't sound really nice, but then yet it'll be like a 4 out of 5 stars. But they've literally barely gave it any type of props. Or like The Last Jedi, and it's all that everybody's a bad person. They're either an ist, a phobe, a Nazi, or something, right? And they did this, and one of the standouts for me is Captain Marvel, where it became a thing wherein anybody who said anything against Captain Marvel, you're just a misogynist pig. Even though I saw women saying things about the Captain Marvel movie too, like that Star Wars girl, Mecha Random, Matt Boom, and several others like that didn't like it either. But it was all, you're a misogynistic, bop 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 bop, and they changed the entire thing of how you do it, right? And they will, and then they, I think they also did a review change again for The Woman King, because people had issues with it right from the gate, just for the subject matter. And when, back in the day, not too, so many years ago, I know other people have said it, where they would bring up that it was a little odd, and not even saying these movies were all bad or anything, but like, people were like, yo, it seems like there's an unfair microscope on some of the DC movies and some of the, other movies. Now, I'm not here to sit there and say because people are like, DC movies suck. No, there's a reason why they made money. And whether you like it or not, they did. Maybe they didn't make as much as you thought, but I can say in comparison, I would see on critical scores very interesting nitpicks on a DC movie, on a Fast and Furious movie, on some of the other movies, that they would kind of ignore that same thing that would happen in a Marvel film. And I'm just using them as one example. Or a, or a Disney movie. Now, if you haven't noticed lately, the new trend has been easy and allowed to just dunk on Disney. Have you noticed that? The different Disney stuff are actually getting really bad reviews. When you see them talk about the journalist stuff, we're talking about like Lightyear, Little Mermaid, and even though Little Mermaid at first people were like, yeah, you notice no one even brings it up anymore. A lot of the Marvel films like Quantumania, where were all these people that are like, you guys are all blah, 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 blah. And even if you look at Ms. Marvel, for example, hardly anybody watched it. And I'm not saying Ms. Marvel was terrible. It should have been better. They should have remembered that she was a superhero and actually had her do more superhero stuff. But overall, not terrible. So, where are these positive journalists that said, oh, it's the greatest thing ever and you all just hate it? Look at the Rotten Tomatoes. It's you guys. She-Hulk as one example. The critical score average tomato is 77%, but the audience score is 32%. Yet, in this recent year, and that was only a year ago, where if you think about it, from 2022 to 2023, Disney has had a much tougher time as of late. So you get Secret Invasion, that's a 54% to a 49% audience score. Interesting enough, you have Captain Marvel, 79% audience score versus a 45%. And that was in 2019. So, see the problem? You go back a few years, and you'll see the audience scores be low, but yet they be high. Now, I remember when Captain Marvel came out, It was in like the 50s or the 40s, and then they changed the thing to pump it back up. Then it still went under. I think it went like to like 55% or something. And then all of a sudden they changed things again and it pumps back up. And now it's at almost 80%. So they did all of these things to pump this movie up. And it's like, this is interesting. And they're calling these people, you know, misogynist and istaphobes and all this other stuff. And you just don't want a woman to be the lead charge. And I see this rhetoric online all the time. Every time someone says anything against somebody or against a thing. And I'm not talking about the Brie Larson hate. That's a different story. I'm talking about specifically when it comes to movies and TV shows. They're like, if someone says anything against a female lead, a race lead or anything, it's immediately said that you're some kind of prejudice. Even though, for example, a lot of those same people who criticize Captain Marvel also talked about how they liked Wonder Woman, how they liked Alita Battle Angel. 2 female-led films. The reason why I talk about these is because you now have something here that's starting to make the rounds about Rotten Tomatoes. I think Vulture broke the story. And now I'm starting to see it on IGN and ComingSoon.net and multiple other sources. Is starting to make its rounds. So let's click on one of these. See what this is about. Rotten Tomatoes under fire. I think this is IGN one. Rotten Tomatoes under fire after PR firm scheme to pay critics for positive reviews is uncovered. Now, for years, I have said it. Other people have said it. But yet, there are even channels I say, John Campea went on a rant when people said there's some kind of unfair thing. And I remember, and I'm just using him as an example. I'm not coming at him, even though he's been having meltdowns lately. John Campea did this thing about DC movies, and he was like, "There's no thing here." There's been YouTube channels I follow, like, and I'm going to give another example. I'm not coming at them. I'm just using him as an example. Comic Book Cast, where he's done videos where he's talked about how no, they're not unfairly doing Disney or something. There is no bot. It's just all Rotten Tomatoes is a bunch of critics at an average of how high they are, and there is no, what's the name? Multiple other places have said it too. Like I said, I'm not coming at them. I'm just using them because you can go and check, and there is recording in them on record stating that no, this does not happen. Well, while television, film and television reviews aggregator Rotten Tomatoes has come under scrutiny by filmmakers like Martin Scorsese before, so filmmakers have brought them under scrutiny, and that means it's been coming up, and it ain't just YouTubers, it ain't just this. Martin Scorsese, he is a director. So we got a new report doubles down on why consumers may want to think twice before taking a recommendation from the website. In an in-depth report published earlier today, Vulture uncovered a scheme from a PR firm called Bunker 15 to goose reviews for 2018 Daisy Ridley drama Ophelia. After initial reviews came in, resulting in a disappointing 46% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, a movie is deemed rotten if it's falling under 60% rating. Vulture reports that Bunker 15 started paying lower level critics on the website to post positive reviews for $50 a pop. Essentially trying to manipulate the system, the firm also lobbied one critic to change their negative review to a positive review. As it turns out, the scheme worked and the money followed. Ophelia jumped to a 62% rating, scoring that coveted fresh label. And the next month, IFC Films announced it acquired the film for distribution. Bunker 15, for its part, denied the allegations, with founder Daniel Harlow telling Vulture, "We have thousands of writers in our distribution list. A small handful have set up a specific system while filmmakers can sponsor or pay to have them review a film." Understandably, many reacted to the report with a mixture of disbelief and sadness over how this could happen. Mike Ryan, a PR firm, has been manipulating Rotten Tomato scores of movies for at least 5 years now by paying some critics directly. Truly depressing stuff here. There you go. So you can see that. Now, here's the thing. Rotten Tomatoes, and that's as far as I need to read. There's like some other things on here too. Why am I, someone, Richard Lawson, why am I wasting time trying to and often failing to say something cogent and interesting about movies I've seen when I should be writing yes or no and hitting publish? So some people are kind of going off, rightfully so, because if you think there are PR firms that are there to bump you up, and you probably heard about this where like sometimes people will try to get bigger on social media, so they'll buy bots, or they'll buy people to kind of glow them up. I know, because I know, I've mentioned, I don't mention names, but I've talked to some people in the industry, and not my one friend, but a couple other people where I've gotten to see movies ahead of time or little different things like that because, I may have ran into people. And I'm talking low level stuff. I'm talking like I'm not like some big dude to do this. I just may have known them from something and they may work in there like in a writer's room or something. But I do not reveal anything, and I will never do that. But when you think about it, you think if they're paying them $50, I think that's what it was like $50 a review or whatever, and then it got picked up. That's big business right there. You went from your movie being rotten to your movie getting picked up by a distributor. And if you don't know, there's a reason why, like, for example, Legends Monsterverse, even though it's like Legendary Studios, Warner Brothers is the distributor. So it's a big deal to get a distributor for your film. And I've talked to people, and there's other people who work in the industry, and they're like, hey, we're working on a film. Like right now, the writer's strike has been like tearing them up at the moment. They're trying to get, they're waiting because they need to get these things done, but they can't, and, writer's strike as well, and all these other things. And if you think that Disney, for example, wasn't paying people, notice how I mentioned multiple things from different years. And if you look at stuff now, like Quantumania, Little Mermaid, and all these different things, you'll start noticing a trend like Lightyear, right? Where you're starting to see that these things. So if you remember now, when I'm mentioning Little Mermaid, I'm talking in the sense of once they started to realize that it wasn't making the money that it was going to make and do all these things, because it has a pretty good Rotten Tomatoes score and a good audience score. Here's what's funny. If you look at the things, they kind of stopped talking about it when it stopped making the money. And now it's been more trendy to kind of come at Disney. I think what's going on, now I have not seen Little Mermaid, and I'm probably not going to, so I don't know whether it's good or bad. Funny enough, the couple people I know that have seen it, and I'm talking about kids, they were kind of like about it. But I also heard that, Halle Bailey, and I know she has a beautiful voice and stuff like that. So I'm not knocking, I'm using an example. So this movie has all these good reviews, yet it didn't make a lot of money, which means a lot of people didn't go see it. It's happened with DC films. But if you look at most of the trends, you start to notice you have Lightyear, 74% for the critical reviews, 84% for the audience score. Here's what's interesting. Not only was Lightyear a phenomenal bomb at the box office, a lot of people didn't see it. That's what that means. And it's funny because for Rotten Tomatoes, I think it has 319 reviews. And it's at 74%. So it's like, okay, what's going on here? Now, I haven't seen one person, including myself, who actually liked Lightyear. Now, Aquaman, who's a much better received film, got a 66% off of 415 reviews and a 72% score off of 25,000 reviews for the audience score. So what's going on there? Well, I think what's happening is that the money has dried up with Disney. So now that's why it's been very trendy lately to crap on Disney movies. Because if you think about it, you see the Rotten Tomatoes and they're banking, because there are people, my friend has ran into them, I've ran into them, where we've told people, they're like, oh, but the Rotten Tomatoes score says it's good, so it must be good. And we're like, what? First off, why don't you look at the audience score? That's a better barometer. And even then, you need to kind of gauge these things out for yourself. Because I've watched films that are extremely popular. Barbie is one of them. And I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I didn't think it was that great. Yet it's $1 billion movie. But it is very interesting that now this is kind of called, I think Rotten Tomatoes ended up removing them from there. But they keep using this thing like, it's marginalized voices. That's the whole trick. It's marginalized voices we're trying to get in there. No, I know for a fact that there are places that will pay somebody like in India or something like that, and they'll just be like, okay, come in here and say these things. You don't think that they're not? The manipulation of the internet, in your opinion, does happen. You will see trends. How do you think some of these trends go? Sometimes people buy these trends so they can push it and push it and push it, and it'll come to market, and then all of a sudden other people start to do it because they think it's a trend, and boom, you're now getting cash flow, cash revenue. Sometimes things go viral, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's manufactured. So now that this has come out, now I know some people might be like, alleged. Like, no. There's a reason why Rotten Tomatoes removed them. It's because they got caught. And the guy who runs Rotten Tomatoes, I think also, if I remember correctly, runs Fandango, that used to work for Disney. It's interesting how most of the Disney stuff, and some of it wasn't that as good. I don't agree with all of it. But if you look at stuff like, they were talking about like, Last Jedi was review bombed. Here's what's funny. I know people who love Disney Star Wars. I actually don't hate all of Disney Star Wars. I think some of it is good, some of it is bad. That is true. But I don't think all of Disney Star Wars is terrible. Like some people are like, they're all terrible. Like I don't really like the prequels. So I'm a person of a differencing of an opinion. And even some of the hardest hardcore people I know flat out say they're not big fans of The Last Jedi. Yet, it was review bombed, or it was this. And they always talk about when something doesn't get liked, it goes review bombed, or they go, oh, it's because people are review bombing it before it even came out or something. Not realizing that critics have seen it. You don't think some of these people might have gotten to see the movie ahead of time too? Like myself? So, it just comes down to this. That said, you think if this lower level place with a no-name movie like Ophelia got pushed up, you don't think that Disney, heck, even Warner Brothers, Lionsgate, or any of these big studios, you don't think they pay for reviews? You ever just notice, especially lately, how there could be some really high critical reviews, but the audience score is in the toilet, and then people are questioning it, and they're like, wait, what? That movie was terrible. There's their whole thing. They don't care. There's a reason. You notice that, for example, they still talk about opening weekends. Thor: Love and Thunder, opening weekend, huge. This movie, opening weekend, huge. Which really, to be honest with you, the second weekend is really what's important. What did you do the second week and the third week? Who cares about if you had some amazing opening weekend? Because they try to say that that's the trend, but it's not. That is not the trend. You've seen it, where a movie will have a really good opening weekend. Heck, it happened with Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle had a pretty decent opening weekend at the top of the box office. Not saying it was like greatness. It happened with Black Adam. They had Rock's highest opening weekend. I'm not saying it blew the doors off, but it showed that there was a high, it might have been like the top of that weekend. And then it just plummets. And it happens. These things are manufactured. This is the proof that you needed to see that Rotten Tomatoes is not 100% on the up and up. And it probably has never really been. And you could tell because whether they want to admit it or not, the money does dictate. If something has made money over the course of the time, it does dictate to a degree if people are enjoying a film or not. Now, I'm not sitting there going, because some people go, money doesn't make a movie good. Yeah, but money makes a movie paid attention to. Money means that there are people who are actually enjoying the films to some degree. It happened with like Transformers and stuff, and now where people are like, these movies are trash, but they were always making money because people were enjoying them. It doesn't always have to be the greatest film ever. It's about being enjoyed and escapism. However, you notice Disney Star Wars stuff, I'm talking about across the board, Marvel stuff is all now getting crapped on by outlets, not the YouTubers and the alt-right blah 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 blah. It's actually now getting crapped on by outlets and stuff, and I think in all honesty it's because the money dried up. They don't have the money to protect themselves right now or to get these people to say stuff. And there was also an interview with a critic where a little while ago, I think about a year, maybe 2 years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where he openly said that they have to play ball. And when they have to play ball, what they're basically saying, and he openly said it, is that sometimes they have to, in order to get to these premieres, in order to get to these things, in order to get to this stuff, you got to give this particular movie a good review, even though you know it's crap, in order to keep the gravy train going. It's happening with the economy. You think that if especially right now where people are hurting, you don't think that if a studio turns around and goes after a big name critic and pays them like 10 grand or 20 grand just to give them a good review, because in the long run, we're talking maybe millions, possibly billions is on the line. You don't think they won't do that? Come on now. Let's be serious. You really think that these corporations will not do that to save their own bottom line? So that's all I'm saying is that I'm not shocked. I do think it's very interesting that it has come out, and this should be questioned. Because there's a lot of times, if you really look, and these people who keep constantly getting accused, I'm not saying all these people are perfect or anything like that, but every time someone talks against a certain type of movie or certain thing, you don't think they pay people and bots and stuff? And I do know this, is that corporations will actually get people to write things under fake names. If you look at some of the Woman King reviews, for example, I think it was talking about, and I think I actually talked about it, it was talking about like seats. It was like, oh, nice seats. Miss Viola Davis, like, no, and it was constantly saying the same thing as if it was almost auto-generated. Miss Viola Davis was a powerhouse. The seats were nice. Things like that. And then it would give it a high score or a higher score. So tell me what you think. I don't subscribe to Rotten Tomatoes. I may look sometimes just to see an audience score, just for reference or just to see what's going on. But even then, I kind of look at that with a maybe kind of thing. I look at multiple critical sites to see what they're doing and see if there's a trend or anything like that. But that's just me. I would like to hear what you think and how you feel about the fact that now there is some proof of at least an interview or something that somebody has been buying scores on Rotten Tomatoes, and Rotten Tomatoes is actually being paid for. Geek Protagonist, you stay safe, you stay healthy, you stay real. See ya.